Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome y'all here today for the dual enrollment and tuition equalization grant ad hoc committee, the Higher Education Committee today. I want to welcome everybody. Thank everybody for coming. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Scoggins to say a word of prayer. But first, like everybody in the room, to please keep in mind our fellow Georgians in Middle and South Georgia today who are fighting through and tightening down the hatches as they are going through the hurricane, as we're all watching that. And we're going to try to run this meeting as smoothly as possible and get us out of here in a timely fashion, because I know we're going to have some rain and rush hour coming soon. But Representative Scoggins.
Let us pray. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here today to discuss the issues facing Georgia and our colleges. And we just ask for your guidance in making any decisions that may come in the future. We ask for your protection and the people that are involved or in line with the hurricane that's coming in South Georgia and Florida. Be with us and guide us throughout the day. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Scoggins. So first, we're just going to go through and introduce the members of the committee, and we'll start with Representative Scoggins.
Hello, I'm Representative Mitchell Scoggins from District 14, which covers Bartow County and part of Cherokee County.
Thank you. Chairman Dempsey.
Katie Dempsey, I represent House District 13, which is Floyd County and most of Rome.
Thank you. Chairman Mathiak.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I represent Spalding County, a little bit of Henry, which is the Hampton area, and Fayette County, which is Woolsey, Brooks, little piece of Peachtree City in southern Fayette County itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brunel.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Rhonda Brunel. I represent Clayton County. I represent specifically the city of Riverdale, city of Forest Park, and the unincorporated parts of Riverdale and Forest Park.
Thank you. And we'll go to Chairman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chuck Martin, I represent the 49th District in North Fulton, comprised of portions of Alpharetta, Milton, and the city of Roswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now we'll go to our members who are joining us by Zoom, and we will start with Chairman Dickey.
Good morning, Robert Dickey, District 145, Middle Georgia, 5 Middle Georgia counties: Crawford, Peach, Houston, Bibb, and Crawford. So glad to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we'll go to Representative Earhart.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jenny Earhart, representing District 36, which is the western portion of Cobb County.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Chairman Jaspers.
Hey there, it's Rick Jaspers up here in beautiful Jasper, Georgia today. Have District 11, Pickens, a little bit of Cherokee, and a little bit of Forsyth County. Good to be with you guys today.
Great. Next, we'll do Chairman Dubnick.
Good afternoon, Matt Dubnick from Hall County. I represent the cities of Gainesville and Oakwood.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Representative Bentley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me? I'm sorry.
We can hear you.
A phone call was coming in, interrupting me. I apologize. This is Patty Bentley, House District 150, down in the rural part of the state. I have Taylor County, Macon County, Dooley County, the city of Fort Valley, the city of Andersonville, and the city of Americas. And I'm really glad to be a part of this committee. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Representative Park.
Hey y'all, Sam Park from House District 107 in Gwinnett County. I represent the city of Lawrenceville.
Thank you. Next, Representative Jackson.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Edna from Savannah, Georgia. As you know, we're here in the hurricane area. Y'all just pray for us, representing 165.
Thank you, Representative. And we're thinking about y'all and praying for y'all down there in Savannah and coastal Georgia. Next will be Representative Glaze.
Good afternoon, everyone. Representative Lydia Glaze from House District 67, which is inclusive of parts of Noonan and Coweta County and South Fulton, with Palmetto, Fairburn, Union City, part of South Fulton, and we are just glad to be a part of this committee. Thank you so much. And we are praying for our coastal Georgia, Savannah, all our folks down there. We are definitely keeping you guys lifted up in prayer.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Moore.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Representative Angela Moore. I represent House District 91, which incorporates DeKalb, Rockdale, and parts of Henry County. Good afternoon, and God bless you all down there in the south of Georgia.
Thank you. And last but not least, we'll go to Vice Chairman Carter Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Carter Barrett. I represent House District 24, which is on the northern side of Atlanta, exclusively within Forsyth County, the city of Cumming, and a little bit of city of Alpharetta.
Thank you. And I'm honored to say with that, we have every single member, Chairman Martin, either in person or on the call virtually attending the meeting today. So I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. So we'll get started. I just want to kind of give an overview of this committee and the work and what we're going to be doing over the next few months. I appreciate Chairman Martin asking me and Vice Chair Barrett to lead this process. As y'all know, we've been tasked to dive into dual enrollment and the tuition equalization grants here in Georgia. As you know, last session, we had several pieces of legislation that came before this committee that dealt with the tuition equalization grants and also dual enrollment. As you do enrollment every few years, we have to take a look at it. As members will remember, I was not a part of the body at the time, but in 2019, House Bill 444, which was the Dual Enrollment Act at the time, took a very hard look at dual enrollment, made some improvements to it, adjusted some things to make sure that this program would stabilize and be around for many years to come. And that is our task with this committee, and look forward to working with all of my fellow members here in person and virtually, and look forward to working with you all the next few months. So what we're going to do is basically take a deep dive and have a deep understanding into the programs that will be presented to us today. And we've asked the stakeholders and the presenters today to present these programs, but also to present to us what's working, what's not working, how we can make improvements, efficiencies, and successes for both programs. We're here, we want to help. So what we're going to do today, we will hear from several agencies that are here that administer these programs. And what we're going to do is we'll start with President Riley on the tuition equalization grant. If y'all don't mind, members, we'll let her get through her presentation, and we'll then hold all questions to the end, and then we'll move on to dual enrollment. Just so everybody is on the same page too, I know Molly and the staff has sent out all these notes and some documentation and to be referenced for the meeting today. But just for future meetings that we're going to be holding for members of the committee and for the stakeholders and everybody in the audience, our next meeting will be September 15th in Athens on the campus of University of Georgia. And then we will have another meeting for this committee on October 4th. The location will be to be determined. Kind of our thoughts on these two meetings is the next meeting, September 15th, we're going to take dual enrollment and that be a day that we focus strictly on dual enrollment. Then on our October 4th meeting will be the tuition equalization grants. And then we'll wrap up October 26th in Statesboro for the committee that day. That is same day as legislative day on the campus of Georgia Southern University. So that worked out very nicely, and we're very appreciative of University of Georgia and Georgia Southern willing to host us. So with that being said, President Riley, we'll turn it over to you for the overview of the tuition equalization grant. And members, y'all should have all of her presentation in your packet, and members who are here virtually has all been emailed as well. Thank you all. President Riley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be before you today. I will give you a brief overview of the tuition equalization grant program that the Georgia Student Finance administers and how we operate to provide the state funding for this program. The tuition equalization grant program was created by statute in 1971. I've brought reference in your presentation to the code sections that provide the directives of the administration of the program. It is administered by the Georgia Student Finance Authority, one of 3 entities that the Student Finance Commission oversees on behalf of the state. The award amounts for tuition equalization grant are established annually by appropriations of the General Assembly. And to underscore again that this program is provided, funding is provided with general fund appropriations. While the Student Finance Commission offers a variety of higher ed financial aid awards, some funded by lottery proceeds, tuition equalization grant is state general fund dollars. On our next slide, institution eligibility, those institutions that are authorized to receive tuition equalization grant dollars for their students. Institution eligibility for 2 types of private institutions, non-proprietary and proprietary. Non-proprietary are those that you would consider to be nonprofit. And the eligibility requirements for non-proprietary institutions is that they are not a branch of the University System of Georgia. They're not owned or operated by a different state. They have accreditation by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. It's not a graduate level school or a college of theology or divinity, and is not presently receiving state funds. And in the past, junior college status would potentially receive state funds. And so that's why in statute, it prohibits non-propriety from receiving those dollars. In contrast, proprietary institutions or for-profit institutions have a different set of eligibility criteria. A proprietary institution must be a baccalaureate degree granting institution of higher education. It must be also accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. It cannot be a Bible school or college, and it must admit only students with a high school diploma, GED, or a degree from an accredited post-secondary institution. And it must enroll students who are eligible for federal Pell Grants. Additional eligibility requirements: the institution must have existed in this state for at least 10 years. It has to have been approved for operation and receipt of TEG funds from the Georgia Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission. That agency is administratively attached to the Student Finance Commission. The proprietary institution must be domiciled and incorporated in the state of Georgia, and it must have met all of these requirements as of January 1, 2011. Student eligibility to receive a tuition equalization grant: a student must be full-time enrolled at an approved institution, meet the residency requirements, maintain satisfactory academic progress as certified by the institution, and these grants require no academic merit or financial aid need on the student. The General Assembly in fiscal year 2024 increased the annual award rates for tuition equalization grants. For an annual rate of $900, it went up to $1,000 in FY 2024. And you can see on this slide that the per semester and per quarter rates are apportioned appropriately. This is a busy slide, but these are some statistics of the growth of the use of tuition equalization grants by the number of students. Over time, you can see that in 1989, it was less than 20,000 students that were receiving tuition equalization grants. You can see in 1999, it went up to about 30,000 and then stayed in that general area for a number of years. And starting in 2014, we started to see a decline below the 30,000 student threshold. In 2023, it was closer to 25,000 students that received the tuition equalization grant. The green line on this slide indicates, if you look at the right-hand side, the scale which shows the per semester award amount. For early on in 1989, it was at $500 and stayed at that rate for a period of time. Then over time, the General Assembly fluctuated a bit on the per semester award amount. In 2023, it was $450 per semester. And in 2024, it will rise again to $500 per semester. On this slide, you will see the use of dollars for awards. And again, in 1989, it was under $15 million that was awarded. A high water mark was achieved in 2009 that went up closer to $40 million. It started to decline again. If you look back at the prior slide, you'll see that the award rates reduced at that time. And so the total dollars out reduced commensurately. And then it has stabilized over the past few years closer to $20 million. This next slide is a busy one, but for those that have a copy of it, this is the FY 2023 utilization of tuition equalization grant dollars by the participating institutions. If you start on the upper left column, you can see that Mercer University received the most dollars in FY 2023. And then the amounts dropped accordingly based on the utilization in all of the approved and authorized tuition equalization grant recipient institutions in the state. And Mr. Chairman, that's a quick overview of how finance administers the program and the dollars that have been invested with these students over the past 30 plus years.
Right. Thank you, President Riley. And I really appreciate that. And I'd like to point out to the members that are here, in your packet is a report that the Department of Audits and Accounts did. It was emailed out to every member last week, I believe, from Molly. If you haven't reviewed it yet, I would urge you to. There is a lot of good information in this report and background about the program. It was very helpful. I know one of the questions I've gotten from several members over the past few weeks was the understanding of this program. And I know everybody we know about dual enrollment, but this is one that I've gotten a lot of questions about. So I would urge you before our next meeting or two to please take a look at this because there's a lot of good information. With that being said, I will open it up to any questions, any members here present first, if there are any questions. No? All right. Is there anybody connected with us virtually that have a question for President Riley? Well, while I wait on them, I'm going to go to Chairman Martin real quick. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wouldn't wait on the committee for questions. Chairman Raleigh, you may have alluded to this in your comments, but I believe what we're going to find out, isn't it true, as we get into this and dual enrollment, that if the institution we often have people come before our committee said we would like to be TEG, we would like to be able to be part of TEG. And can you just fully articulate for the subcommittee and the public that it's a one size fits all? If one falls into the TEG, one also tell us what else comes with that, because I think that's one of the things, Mr. Chairman, that we look at as we go forward, that if you become eligible for one piece of this funding, you actually get it all. So just wanted to give, since the president's the job is to administer all that funding, I was going to ask her to make sure we were aware of it all coming together.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that question. Chairman Martin is correct. Institution that has been approved for the tuition equalization grant would also be eligible to participate in all of our higher educational financial aid programs, our Hope Scholarship and Hope Grant programs, our other loan and scholarship and grant programs, and the dual enrollment program as well. So it would open up these institutions to be able to receive lottery dollars and other state dollars to participate in all of the financial aid programs we offer.
Thank you, President Riley, and thank you, Chairman Martin. She has. Okay. We're going to go to Representative Glaze for a question.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. President Riley, is there an overlap of map that shows us the graduation rate of those students who are in receiving TAG in the proprietary institutions in Georgia?
Representative Glaze, I would direct you to review the report that was provided by the Department of Audits and Accounts. That report does speak to graduation rates and employment for students receiving tuition equalization grants. That is not a statistic that the Student Finance Commission administers, but you can find that information in that report.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. And yeah, President Riley, that is the report I was referencing. So a lot of good information in there. Any other members virtually that has a question? Any members present here in the committee room? Well, great. Well, I'd urge all members to dive into this information we have regarding this program. I know it's a lot of information that we have emailed out and that we have before us as we head into our next few committee meetings to dive into this. I'm sure there'll be more questions. And as we move forward and everybody reviews everything, please feel free to send the questions or thoughts to myself or Molly as we prepare for our next meeting. So with that being said, President Riley, we'll go ahead and move on to the dual enrollment part of the meeting. And while you're there, we'll just have you go ahead and present for dual enrollment for as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, thank you, members of the committee. Happy to present information on the administration of the dual enrollment program as done by the Georgia Student Finance Commission. The dual enrollment program has been around in many forms for many years. In 2015, the Excel, Hope Grant, dual enrollment, and Move On When Ready program all existed, and they were merged into the Move On When Ready program. At that time, the program was open to all high school students, public, private, and home study. There were no credit hour limitations, no course subject limitations, and the dual enrollment program covered the cost of tuition, fees, and books for students that were participating. In 2017, the program changed its name to dual enrollment. And as I mentioned earlier, a tuition equalization grant is funded by state general funds. The dual enrollment program is also funded by state general funds. As Chairman Fleming referenced earlier, House Bill 444 revised the program significantly, and it made changes to the course types that were authorized. There were grade level limitations and college semester hour limitations, and I'll go a little bit more into detail on each of those three. Course limitations were restricted to core subject areas, as you know, English, mathematics, science, social studies, and foreign language, and also career, technical, and agricultural education, or CTAE courses. And those courses must be aligned with the Department of Education's career cluster and pathways. So the courses that students could take and be funded by state dual enrollment dollars were limited to those courses. And I will stop and remind the members of the committee that students could pay and still can pay for dual enrollment out of their own pocket. But these limitations that are on the program are limitations for those courses that the state will pay for. So grade level limitations, all 11th and 12th grade students may take core or CTAE courses and receive funding for them. 10th grade students that are enrolled in CTAE courses at the Technical College System of Georgia, or 10th grade students with qualifying ACT or SAT scores, or 10th grade students pursuing an accelerated career diploma are allowed to participate and receive the funding. Semester hour limitations were also enacted with House Bill 444. There is a 30 semester hour cap. Students may not retake courses and receive funding more than once. Students are limited to 2 course withdrawals to remain eligible to continue in the program. And as I said a moment ago, they may take dual enrollment courses at their own expense. We like to remind high school students that this is something that the state provides to them, 3 free credit hours of college education, 30 free semester hours of college education. Some statistics, and much of this information that I'll go over now is in the dual enrollment report that the Student Finance Commission prepares annually and provides to the General Assembly. It reviews the utilization and the dollars invested and other data. And so I will give you the highlights now, but you have received a copy of that report as well, and you can take a deeper dive into some of the more granular information within that report. But some highlights: statistics and dual enrollment student counts over time. As you can see, prior to the changes that were made in 2020 with House Bill 444, significant growth in the utilization by students, recognizing that free college is a gift that not everyone is able to enjoy. Of course, they do have to receive their high school counselors' approval to enroll in the dual enrollment program. There is an application process that they must fill out at our website, georgiafutures.org, so that then we can track the students that are taking advantage of this program and track the award hours and dollar amounts that we're investing in our students' higher ed. But you can see that there was a decline from 2020 to 2021. Some of that we can relate to pandemic, but some of that can also be directly related to the changes that were made pursuant to House Bill 444. Student enrollment by institution type. You can see that predominantly the Technical College System of Georgia, by number of students, enrolls the most year over year. And again, you can see that the total utilization at each of the institution types, USG, TCSG, or the privates, grew from 2016 through 2020. And then due to the circumstances that I mentioned earlier, did decline after House Bill 444 and the pandemic both influenced the utilization. Fiscal year funding by institution type. You can see the breakdown that, cumulatively of all 3 types of institutions. The growth, again, that is commensurate with the number of students, grew over time, reached a high water mark of just under 105 million in 2019, and then has declined since the House Bill 444 went into effect, and the pandemic made some changes to enrollment. And I will say that while we have not finalized our FY 2023 numbers, we are still going through reconciliation with the financial aid offices at our higher education institutions to get the final numbers before we issue the FY 2023 report. But we're back up about $74.5 million that we awarded in FY 2023. So you can see, as you've heard earlier today, that there has been enrollment rebound at our institutions, and we saw that in FY 2023 in a dual enrollment program as well. This slide also is interesting. As you can see, attendance by delivery location in FY 2020, it was primarily on college campuses. Then the pandemic hit. And while most of the students had enrolled for the spring semester before we had a state lockdown, that's indicative in showing that 67% at least began their spring semester on campus. And then, as you can see in FY 21 and 22, the delivery model changed dramatically. FY 2023 is fairly consistent with what you see for FY 2022, but again, we haven't completed our final reconciliations, and we hope to have that report out to you in the next month or two. Dual enrollment students by grade level, as you can see in FY 2020, prior to the implementation of House Bill 444, freshmen were still taking advantage of enrolling in dual enrollment. But in FY 21 and 22 and forward, 9th grade students are not authorized to participate and receive payment by the state. Again, they could pay for it out of pocket, but state dollars do not pay for ninth graders to utilize the program. The graduating high school class of 2022, we just provided some information on their utilization of other types of advanced coursework as well as dual enrollment in these slides. If you look at the pie chart on the left side, you can see that of the graduating class of 2022, 45% did not take any type of advanced coursework, and 55% took at least some type of advanced coursework, with 10% taking dual enrollment only and 14% taking both dual enrollment and APIB courses. On the right-hand side of this screen, you would see the average HOPE GPA that was calculated. For all graduates, it was an average of 3.05, but dual enrollment in AP and IB, you could see significantly higher GPAs that they graduated with, and a reduction of the GPA for those that did not take any advanced coursework. Post-secondary credentials earned in high school. These are either certificate or diplomas or associate's degrees that have been earned, starting with the class of 2016 through 2021. We had a high water mark in 2020 of close to 4,000 students that received a credential before they graduated from high school. And in 2020, we saw over 4,300 certificate or diplomas that were earned and 356 associate's degrees. So these are students received not only a high school diploma, but some college certifications as well. Post-secondary performance. These are dual enrollment students that on the left side, that after their first year in college, just to illustrate their HOPE GPA, which we calculate at Student Finance Commission, that dual enrollment students tended to outperform non-dual enrollment students when they entered their and completed their first year of college. Their grade point average was significantly higher in most cases. And persistence, students enrolling as freshmen and then persisting on to their second year of post-secondary education. Those that took dual enrollment in high school outperformed those students that graduated and enrolled in college as well. Next, we look at awards, Hope and Zell-Miller Scholarship Awards that were provided to students that took dual enrollment in high school, starting on the left with the class of 2016. Of the class of 2016, 53.5% of those that went on to college were eligible and received a Hope Scholarship. 16% received a Zell-Miller Scholarship, and then you can see the statistics over time from 2016 through 2021. Now, this next screen is an eye chart. I know that you all can look at this at your leisure, but this is more for information purposes for the members of the committee to be able to look at by institution the utilization of dual enrollment dollars over time. And this is from FY 2016 through FY 2022. These are the University System of Georgia dollar amounts, with the right column is an accumulation of those years. That's the amount of dollars that the institutions have invoiced Georgia Student Finance Commission for delivery of dual enrollment courses to students while they were in high school. The next slide are TCSG institutions breakdown for those same number of years. Again, this is probably much more legible to the members of the committee, either online or in the packets that we provided to you. But we wanted to make sure it was part of this presentation, so you would have it for easy reference. And the private post-secondary institutions is a breakdown as well. So I won't spend any time on this, but I again wanted to make sure that you had this data for your reference when you're contemplating the program. Some modifications were made to the program. Senate Bill 86 was approved by the General Assembly and went into effect on July 1st. These were revisions to the Hope and Zell-Miller grants and the dual enrollment program. This is allowing students who are in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade to be able to take advantage of Hope grant award amounts prior to exhausting all 30 of their dual enrollment credit hours. Prior to Senate Bill 86, a student must have utilized all of their dual enrollment credit hours before Student Finance was paying for any additional post-secondary education with Hope and Zell Miller grants. So Senate Bill 86 is now allowed using the Hope grant amount prior to using all of the dual enrollment dollars for the students that are pursuing an accelerated career diploma or are enrolled in CTA courses. This is helping students that are pursuing some kind of certification or associate's degree while in high school, pursuing an accelerated career diploma, to be able to take all the courses in a sequence that would allow them to receive those credentials. And I'm sure you'll hear from our providers some more detailed information on this specific area. This has just gone into effect as of July 1st. And I'll finish up with another eye chart. This is our dual enrollment award amount. We publish this schedule every year on our website. We pay by credit hour at each of the institutions based on the tuition rates. So you can see on this eye chart that at the university system institutions, which have different tuition rates, we base it on their hourly tuition rate. All TCSG institutions are at $100 per credit hour, and the eligible private post-secondary institutions are awarded at $250 per credit hour for semester attendance and $187 per credit hour for quarter attendance. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will be happy to field questions.
Thank you, President Riley. I first like to welcome Leader Park in person. Thank you for joining us. And I'll open it up for questions here in a minute, but I've got a few for you, President Riley. So just to recap to one of your slides, I think on slide 5, 30 semester hour cap. Now, does that mean 30 semester hours for a year or the total life of the program?
Total life of the program, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, 30 hours over the eligibility period of any student in high school.
Okay. And on one of the charts you had where the students were taking these classes, whether they're online, at a TCSG campus, USG campus, or on a high school campus. And maybe this is a question for Department of Education, but if a student is taking it on these classes on a high school campus, are they taking them online at the high school campus, or who is teaching those classes? Is somebody from that institution coming to the high school campus to teach it, or is it a high school teacher teaching it?
Mr. Chairman, I will defer to the Department of Education to answer.
I figured
that
you
question.
would. I figured you would. Okay, so we'll Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those students who are paying for their own courses, can they take the 3,000 or 4,000 level courses?
Representative, I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer that question. I will
Okay.
defer to the institutions to be able to speak to the specific amounts or the specific courses that could be authorized if a student is self-paying.
Okay, thank you.
Leader Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not the leader, just to clarify. I serve as the whip of the caucus and
I'm sorry, Whip, my bad.
grateful to serve as whip.
Maybe it was a rumor I heard. I don't know.
But thank you for the opportunity to ask some questions. Thank you, Commissioner Riley, for your presentation as always. To go back to the conversation regarding tuition equalization grant, I know the audit, the state auditor just really clarified that the real value of those funds have seemingly precipitously declined going back to 1988. Is there any, is there any discussion or effort to kind of look at TEG in its entirety as to how it could better be utilized to ensure that it's having a greater impact in terms of access to higher education, or even greater focus on addressing some of the workforce areas in the state?
Thank you for that question. I would suggest that may be the purpose of this committee. I know that there has been questions, and the Department of Audits has identified some areas where it might be a benefit for additional study, but I would defer to being able to provide whatever information I might to help the committee deliberate on those particular topics.
And just as a, excuse me, as a general question, over the past few years, there's always been instances to have a very narrow exception for TEG for a specific area, for example, with nursing, right? You know, given the structure of the program as it currently stands, if we are expanding or utilizing TEG for specific programs such as a nursing program, does that then, given the general nature of the program, reduce appropriations for all the other programs if it's kind of a one-size-fits-all program, again, as it's currently structured?
Oh, Representative Park, the tuition equalization program isn't limited to utilization for any specific major. The institutions are authorized to award it to eligible scholars at their institution. The Georgia Student Finance Commission has no restriction on the major that a student might be pursuing for the utilization of the tuition equalization grant.
Okay, thank you. Moving toward the dual enrollment, I was interested in particularly as to the trying to discern the impact that HB 444 has had. I think it's going to be certainly difficult since it coincides with the pandemic. But one of the concerns, at least from some of the data that we've been able to obtain so far, is the potential impact it has on high school students trying to receive post-secondary credentialing upon graduation of high school, where again, if I'm looking at the chart on page 14, we're going from 3,877 students earning a post-secondary credential in 2020 to, you know, about half of that in, 2021. Especially given, I think, the desire of this committee to ensure that we're connecting high school students to our technical colleges to address some of these workforce shortages. How much of an impact do you think HB 444 has had on high school students obtaining or, going into having a dual enrollment kind of opportunity with our technical colleges, and particularly like the limitations as to grade level, ninth grade students not being able to engage in dual enrollment for technical colleges, and the hour limitation also for high school students, 9th, 10th graders, and their inability to now engage in this program. Can you speak to, again, how much of an impact do you think that legislation has had on this decline?
Thank you for the question, Representative Park. I think the presenters that are going to follow me, the ones that actually deliver the courses to the students, will be able to give you a better answer on whether pandemic impacts or House Bill 444 impacts were more significant. Certainly it was a perfect storm when things changed at the same time. But I think that they would have better information. We know the dollar amounts that we dispersed significantly declined, but we could not speak to what causation that might be. So I think that question might be asked after I leave the podium.
Thank you. One final question on dual enrollment. It caught my attention, which was very interesting, but it seems that the dual enrollment awards for TCSG is slightly higher than USG. So is it generally the practice in which more students who are engaged in dual enrollment are going to our technical colleges as opposed to USG?
Well, Representative, we can see that evidenced based by the number of awards that we've given out. I think, again, the providers will be able to explain how they've strategically worked to deliver these courses to students, and I'm sure they'll talk about their successes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Martin.
A couple of questions for the President Riley. Going back to your slide, and I was trying to find it and I can't. I don't want to ask you to try to get back to it, but in 444, the freshmen could no longer avail themselves of dual enrollment. And at that time, we don't know where they were getting that. I know there was some concern about at what age did you put a person on a college campus. Do we really know, and is there longitudinal data, maybe this comes from the institution, of what these freshmen were taking? And well, let me stop and ask, do we know that? Because I have a follow-up, and I suspect you and I've had this conversation. You know where I'm going with this, but
I do not have that information with me. We certainly could provide it, but I would imagine that my colleagues will likely be able to answer that question for you.
Because the follow-up question I have to that is based on Chairman Chairman Fleming, is what they were taking relative to, are we just pushing a class that they should have been sort of getting that English in high school, but we're calling it a dual enrollment class, so somebody else is teaching it. Because now I'm going to ask President Riley, because she funds all this, and remind again the committee that dual enrollment is a good thing. We've seen good aspects, but it's paid for 3 times. That we pay a FTE at the K through 12 level, we pay an FTE in TCSG or the U.S. University system, and then we pay the tuition at the rate that's on that reading chart that President Riley gave us. So it's very important, I think, for us to look at and maybe get data from the providers as what classes are being taken. Are we getting the students ahead toward a college degree or certification? Are we just replacing high school colleges off campus with a course being taught at another geographic location?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. In the annual report that we provide, there is additional data on the types of courses that are being taken. But if you were seeking very specific courses, we could provide that for you, and I know the institutions could as well.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, this is your meeting, but to go to Whit Park's question of, isn't it time, or shouldn't we take an opportunity to look at what the TEG could do to provide its largest impact for the Georgian students? And yes, I think it is. And I hope that's what Chairman Fleming and the members of the subcommittee are going to do for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important too. Several of the members have asked me in conversations leading up to this about the budget impact. And as you just pointed out, that we're paying for this 3 times. Prior to House Bill 444, and FY19 dual enrollment in the state budget was $105 million. Today, it is around $76 million. So there is a financial side we definitely have to look at here. That's kind of the biggest question. One of the number 1 questions I've gotten from this committee.
Chairman, that's only the tuition for dual enrollment. There's the FTE at K through 12 and the FTE at the TCSG.
That's right.
Also being paid for.
Yes, sir. Are there any, we'll go see if there's any questions from anybody who's joined us virtually. Doesn't look like that.
I have
Anybody?
one.
Okay.
This is Rick.
If Chairman Jaspers, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Lynn, look on slide 12. It's your advanced course type.
Yes, Mr.
You've
Chairman.
got the pie chart, showing 2022. I would be curious on the years prior, because I think there's been some discussion, or just heard people have talked to me about it, that dual enrollment is just undermining AP course enrollment. And I'd love to see the years prior to see if there's a trend toward that. Because you like AP courses because the in-depth study and just really advanced learning kids get. And are these swapping out? And is this program hurting dual enroll, AP?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll go back and compile the information we have from prior years and provide it for the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Any other questions? Thank you, President Riley. We appreciate your time. And I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions that we'll have prepared for you for our next meeting, but we appreciate everything you and your staff have done to get ready for today's meeting. And I know you'll have other joint committees that are addressing this as well throughout the off session. So thank you for all your hard work.
We thank you very much, and we stand ready to assist the committee any way we can.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to move on to Department of Education. We have Mr. Matt Cardoza and Jennifer Feeney that will be presenting, I think.
Members, I am Matt Cardoza, the Department of Education, External Affairs Director. Thank you all so much for having us today. with Miss Jennifer Finney, our dual enrollment program specialist at the DOE, and she's going to share a little information on dual enrollment from the K-12 perspective. Jennifer is our resident dual enrollment K-12 expert. She joined the agency to help us navigate House Bill 444 right around 2020, and she has invaluable experience as a former high school principal and assistant principal in multiple districts throughout Northwest Georgia, where she worked closely with students, families, and school counselors on dual enrollment issues and implementation. She brings that experience and commitment to student success to dual enrollment support and trainings that she provides throughout the state to school counselors and others, including people at the DOE. So with that, I'll turn it over and let Jennifer present. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Ms. Finney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. It's good to be with you all today. My presentation is a little more of dual enrollment and practical application. And what does it look like from particularly the high school perspective and through that lens. That's primarily who I work with, although I have the pleasure of working closely with colleagues at the technical system of Georgia and the university system and Georgia Student Finance. I thoroughly enjoy working with them. We are a small team, but mighty, I think. So I just wanted to bring you up to date in terms of dual enrollment today. As we sort of examine, we're far enough into implementation of House Bill 444 to start to really look at what have we wrought here, right? What happened? And so, and thrown into that was COVID, and COVID had a pretty significant impact on education generally and dual enrollment as well. So we are seeing something of a rebound in dual enrollment numbers. We are close to 45,000 students this year participated in dual enrollment around the state. I joked with Matt last night. I said, if you put all of those students into one school system, that would be the 8th largest school district in Georgia. So it's a significant population of our high school students around the state. Almost every district in Georgia participated in dual enrollment last year. That includes our state charter schools and state schools in some capacities. They had student participation in dual enrollment as well. Our largest district participating in dual enrollment is Houston County. They had 2,707 students participating in dual enrollment. Tolliver County had our smallest dual enrollment representation, but they came in with 8, a mighty. Have a couple of districts who last year did not have anybody participate in dual enrollment. They are smaller districts, so I'm sure there's some reasons for that. We continue to add, and I know that my colleagues at the technical college system are going to address this. We continue to add more and more programs to that approved list for the accelerated career diploma, particularly the technical career certificates that students earn as part of that diploma program. So we do have 2 forms of dual enrollment now. I will tell you, it's been very interesting in this role. I started in October of 2020, and in the midst of a pandemic and a lockdown is a really interesting time to get a new job in a new agency and work with new people and implement what was essentially a really big edit of Move On When Ready that brought in a lot of change. And it was one of the hard things about it was communicating all of that out when people weren't in their schools, when counselors weren't in their buildings, students weren't in the buildings, getting that information to people effectively was a challenge. But I feel at this point in time where everybody has lived into the new dual enrollment rules and policies and legislation and generally speaking, we've got our minds wrapped around that. And so, of course, just as we got used to calling it option B, we changed the name to Accelerated Career Diploma because that's how education rolls. We tend to change names just about the time we get everybody using the right name. It's time to change that name. But so we do have our traditional dual enrollment, which is what we all think about for the most part with dual enrollment, right? Do students do that part-time or full-time? They can do it at one of our public university system institutions. They can do it at one of our technical colleges. They can do it at a private college. Almost all of the private colleges in Georgia participate. They can do it online. They can do it in their schools. They can do it on the college campus. So it looks a lot of different ways. Those students are going to meet high school graduation requirements. They may do it with a combination of dual enrollment coursework and high school coursework, but they will meet those requirements. And so their high school transcript, when all is said and done, will look very similar to their counterparts who may not have participated in dual enrollment at all. They are subject, of course, to the 30-hour funding cap. Our accelerated career diploma students are on an alternate path to graduation. As it stands now, it's really the only alternate path to graduation in Georgia, to the high school diploma that we have. These students are going to earn a minimum of 9 credits at high school, along with any of the required state assessments that accompany those courses. To graduate from high school, they must have the college component completed, and that includes completing an associate's degree. Typically, that's going to be an applied associate's that they would be doing, or a technical diploma program, or 2 TCCs off of that approved list. Those technical certificates, they have to be in an approved certificate, but they also have to work in concert. So those are going to work as a pair. If students don't complete that work, then they cannot graduate from high school. Generally, that's going to be participation at a technical college. We do have, I think, 2 institutions in the university system who offer they have an option for accelerated career diploma. They are also subject to the 30-hour funding cap. These students may and often do pull on Hope grant funding to perhaps complete their program of study. But in terms of dual enrollment funding, they also only receive 30 hours. This is a more specific slide about what those high school graduation requirements are for accelerated career diploma. They do have to have 2 English courses, one of which has to be American literature, and the accompanying end of course test that goes with that. In math, they have to take Algebra 1, as well as the EOC that accompanies that course. In science, they have to take biology and the EOC and another state-approved science. And then in social studies, history, they take the personal finance economics course and American government. And then they take one of the other 2 required social studies. They also have to have health and PE, health and fitness. And then you have the post-secondary requirements that those students meet to graduate from high school. So their diploma won't look different, but their high school transcript will look significantly different from their high school counterparts. So one of the really nice things about my job is I have colleagues all over the country who manage dual enrollment programs or facilitate their programs. And one of the things that I will tell you truthfully is we have one of the best programs in the country. If I go to the best practices conference that SREB hosts, or some of the other kind of consortium meetings around dual enrollment, a lot of what they're recommending, a lot of the best practices, a lot of what makes a stable, sustainable, equitable, accessible dual enrollment program, we are already doing here in Georgia. And that's really kudos to you guys. I just get to manage it, but it's a very, we have a very robust and a very strong dual enrollment program that is one of the most accessible in the country. We always have work to do there, right? We can always improve on that. But in a lot of states, it's reserved for students who meet certain socioeconomic parameters, or they're qualified as gifted, or it looks a lot of different ways in a lot of different places. Georgia is one of the few that is kind of, all you gotta do is get into the school, right? Go to a participating institution, get accepted to a college, and you can do it, right? I do think that part of the strength of our program comes from our partnership and collaboration amongst the agencies that participate and manage this program. We're all committed I think at a very granular level to student success and ensuring that in the large sense, in the macro sense, that this program goes well, but also in the micro sense that students have a good experience. I would point out dual enrollment is not a zero stakes game. If it doesn't go well, if a student doesn't perform well, and by and large, our dual enrollment students do perform well, achievement is good. But if they don't, that's going to go on the high school transcript and impact the high school GPA, but it's also going on the college transcript and impacting that college GPA for a much longer time, that they're going to live with and deal with that for a much longer time. And I think we all as a working group and all of us at these agencies appreciate that and keep that at sort of the forefront of our thinking. I would especially say that part of the success of our program is due really to the Georgia Student Finance Commission and having that neutral party control the funding. A lot of states don't have that. And dual enrollment is a direct transaction between school system and college. And that's a much messier way to approach that. And so, of course, Georgia Student Finance is very efficient and competent in what they do, but it helps our program go and it helps it run much more smoothly, having that kind of neutral party in the center controlling funding. It's very significant. Our program is very popular, and we do see in some of our districts, you have more than half of the senior class participating in dual enrollment. There is some, I would say anecdotally, and I would say this just from my own district experience as a district leader, in places where you have very strong advanced placement programs or an international baccalaureate program and things like that, dual enrollment may be just it's a tool in the tool bag. In other districts that don't have those kinds of resources, dual enrollment's invaluable. It is the rigor, it is that option students have to go above and beyond. And so it's very popular, it's very affordable, and it's pretty accessible. From our standpoint, the support that we provide here at the Department of Education, I do a lot of trainings and updates, usually with my friends from Georgia Student Finance, TCSG and USG. We'll do those together. We're doing one tomorrow up in Cleveland, Georgia at the Pioneer Reset up there, actually. So I'm headed from here up to Helen to spend the night. But we work with counselors, we work with administrators, we work with anybody who functions in that role of graduation coach, career counselor, advisor, because advisement is really the linchpin to individual student success in dual enrollment, is that quality advisement on both sides of the house, both at the high school and at the college the student is enrolled with. We do host a best practice workshop every year, November 7th. This year, actually, it'll be down in Macon. And then, of course, we do newsletters and all sorts of information. I typically do a fall update, and then we'll do spring updates after y'all have disbanded for the year when the legislative session is over, and we kind of see what came out of this year's legislative session. The other piece I do is just that individual support, phone calls, emails, supporting those individual students and parents and schools and counselors. One of the trickier parts of dual enrollment can be, how does this look on the high school schedule? What does the course coding look like? That sort of thing. And so I help with that. And also, of course, collaborate and make sure that our team is working. Some of the challenges of dual enrollment or obstacles that might prevent participation in dual enrollment include, for our students, often transportation. One of you had a question about where dual enrollment is being taught. And I will say that in some of our systems around the state, particularly those who have some geographic constraints, you will find that they are teaching those dual enrollment courses on their campuses. And that happens in a variety of ways. Online, it can be an online delivery. It can be the college sends a teacher over, or if there's a high school teacher in place who meets the qualifications to qualify as an adjunct, and they can work all that out. It might be a high school teacher delivering that curriculum as well. That can help mitigate the transportation issue, at least in part. It is going to be difficult for a high school to offer a full array of dual enrollment coursework in that way, but offering it on campus is a way to increase access for students who have transportation limits. Scheduling is tricky. It's tricky for the student and it's tricky for the school. Our colleges operate on they set their calendars. There is not a consistent collegiate calendar in Georgia. So colleges start when they start and they end when they end, and their spring break is when it is. And it's never when the local school system is starting school or taking spring break or any of that. So just those kinds of scheduling issues can be difficult to work around, particularly if a student is part-time and you're trying to match up a high school schedule and a college schedule. That can take a lot of time. It's very labor intensive to do that. For our students, sometimes navigating the processes and varying expectations of the colleges, especially if they go to more than one. And some of our students do that. They will matriculate at more than one institution. I mentioned this earlier, and this is really one of the challenges. The impact of a failure or even a withdrawal can be long lasting, because it's going to impact that high school transcript. And that's a problem, but it's a kind of a short-lived problem once you've graduated from high school. But it's also going on that college transcript, and that is much more long lasting. That 0.0 doesn't go anywhere. For our schools, some of the challenges of dual enrollment come with managing those varying requirements and calendars and personnel at the colleges. In some parts of our state, that's a much easier thing. I live up in Dalton, and in our area, our school systems up there partner typically with Dalton State College and Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Great. Those are great schools. That's two. In the metro area, you can have high schools, they can have students at 27 different schools. And so it is just even knowing who to call if there's a problem is a big, that can be a big issue. The admission requirements at the colleges are often varied. They're not all the same. And so that just comes with, labor intensive, making sure that you have the information correct for that particular college as you're working with a student. One of the challenges for schools is ensuring that the counselors who are working with dual enrollment have adequate time for that intensive kind of advisement. Dual enrollment takes a lot of advisement, particularly accelerated career. Those have to be managed closely. It doesn't do us any good to have a student earn 30 hours of college credit and not graduate from high school, right? That's not helping us as a state. So we want to be sure we're getting that done. And so that just takes a lot of time. And counselors, as you know, in our schools, and particularly our high schools, have a lot of duties. Dual enrollment is not the only thing they're doing. So ensuring that they have that kind of time is a challenge. And then efficiently supporting students if they do withdraw, that remains an ongoing issue. If a student withdraws or fails the course at the college, how does that get reflected on the high school transcript? Because it does get reflected on the high school transcript, but what do we do with that? And there's more variety in that than you might think. So that can be a real challenge for our high schools. Some possible solutions to these. One is to provide those high school career counselors who could really help oversee this process, particularly as Accelerated Career Diploma program grows. It is still a small program, but those numbers are increasing. And as they grow, having some people who are really experts at that in schools would be very helpful, and provide that kind of targeted support would really help us. Helping solve transportation and scheduling issues that some of the schools face would also help there. And again, if you have that consistent liaison, that single point of contact, sometimes that the schools can really help with all of that as well. And we are working, the technical college system and the Georgia Department of Education are working to create articulated credit agreements. We currently have 18 of those around career tech pathways that students can actually complete by doing the work at their high school, completing the high school coursework and the high school credential. And then they're earning college credit once they've graduated and go on and enroll at a technical college, then those credits are awarded. So as we continue that work, that provides a way for students to get that college credit. Perhaps they're not doing it through dual enrollment, but we can master and get a handle on some of those challenges. And that's all I have for you all today.
Thank you, Ms. Feeney. We do have a few questions. First, we'll start with Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple questions. One is, who decided that they could take either U.S. history or world history? I don't know if that was you all's decision under the accelerated career diploma.
So in Georgia, we have three required units of social studies. And so our accelerated career diploma students only have to complete 2 full units, but our policy folks felt like they needed to be off of the required list rather than just an elective social studies course. So because that makes it consistent with the other core areas. So if students are taking the American Lit, the other English they take is also a required English. There are a few choices there, but you pick one of those. So that's where that came from.
Okay, I was just asking because I remember that the U.S. history test, when they used to have to take it to graduate, was one of the hardest tests to pass. That in the science. Yeah, so I didn't know if it had something to do with that.
Yeah, no, it didn't. And if they take the U.S. history, they would take the end of course test. If they take U.S. history at the high school, they would take that test as part of that course. But they could take world history instead, as long as they've got that government and economics combination.
Okay. The other question I had was the one that you put a lot of emphasis on, was the fact that if they failed that class, that it didn't have as great of effect on their high school diploma, but would on their college. So would that affect their hope possibly? Because, you have to maintain that grade point average. So if you start off in the hole with those couple of courses, how would that affect them?
So that is a complicated situation. So where it is going to impact their hope eligibility is actually what it's doing to the high school GPA, because it's going to impact their initial eligibility. My understanding is that the college course, that college transcript initially does not impact hope eligibility. Where it's going to impact it is in that high school GPA.
Okay, and then my final question is, I know that I was an instructional lead teacher in a high school. So, there was some conversation, I think Chairman Jaspers brought it up about AP and IB. When you take those courses, you have to pass the test in order to get a college credit. So that's not quite the same as with dual enrollment when you're taking a whole class. And then once you pass that class, then you do have that college credit. That's correct?
That's correct. Right. Once that course makes its way to the college transcript, it's there. So, and I would say for families that are weighing whether or not they should go the advanced placement route or whether or not they should do dual enrollment. And what you're going to find, I suspect, and again, I don't have data for you. I just have experience to share with this, is you're going to have very few students that only did dual enrollment and didn't do any advanced placement. I think one of the responses that schools have had to the growth of dual enrollment is that they've introduced more and varied AP courses earlier in the high school experience. And so you might have AP Human Geography offered in 9th grade or things like that. So students really come to dual enrollment often with advanced placement experience. But yes, you are correct. So that is a little bit of a dice roll when I take an advanced placement course. If I don't get the score on the AP exam that I need, I might not get any college credit for that. Whereas if I take AP US History, that's kind of a question mark. If I take US History through dual enrollment and it's on my college transcript, then it's on.
And that's the problem that I have, because AP teachers can go out of their way. They can be excellent teachers, but then those students come and take that test because I had to administer it. And all of a sudden they forget everything they've lost.
right. Well,
They've learned and then they fail and then they still don't have a college credit for
Right,
that course.
exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. So, yes.
Chairman Martin.
Hey, thanks. Thank you for the information. Maybe this was just for something I'll plant with you and we can get together, but you said, you know, what happens if it doesn't go well? And my question was going to be, what means not go well?
Right.
And you've articulated a little bit of that now. But I'd still like to look at that because that's what is of some concern to me, that the students are getting in the right place. We're not just moving them to there so that we don't have to teach them in high school. Okay. I'm going to say it. I mean, nobody wants to hear it, but that happens. I believe. And again, you also talked about affordable, you know, and respectfully, I think this is the most expensive education we deliver. And then I would like us to look at making it more affordable so we could do more with that, the 30 hours. So I'd love to talk to you about that. And then you hit something that I'd never really thought of before. And there's a lot of that out there, I'm sure, but don't laugh at me. They all know. But you said this, that one school may have students going to, you know, 15, 20, I think you said maybe 30 different places for dual enrollment. You know, should we have some input in that? I mean, should there be a place where I feel like dual enrollment's being marketed to students for seat time at the universities, TCSG and private schools.
Sure.
I don't have anything,
Sure.
specifically to say that, but I mean, it would seem like there would be some synergies for this area. I don't want to take anything away from anybody, but I'd love to have your feedback from the department on, you know, hey, you're in high school here and we've got 30 kids going to dual enrollment and they're going in 15 different places. There's no synergy. There's no study together. There's no doing things together. So again, I'll stop and you can articulate now or get with you later for the committee's time. But that point just struck me that you may have students from a single high school going to X number of dual enrollment opportunities.
So in our larger counties where you have multiple high schools, you're going to have so I'll use Cobb as an example. They're going to, most of their dual enrollment is going to be at Chattahoochee Tech or at Kennesaw State, but it also might be at Georgia Tech. And it also might be at Georgia State. And it also might be at some of the privates in Atlanta, you know, and so you have the way that our dual enrollment regulations are written, students really can go anywhere. And that's just how it was designed. So with eCore and some of the online opportunities, students could really be enrolled at a college that's not anywhere close to where they are geographically. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just comes down to manageability. How well can the high school manage that, depending on the numbers of students? If you have 400 students at your high school who are participating in dual enrollment and they're going to 20 different schools, that is a lot it's a lot on the counseling staff and the administrative staff to manage all of that.
Well, I would love, again, further without taking,
Sure.
taking something away from a student. I'd love to find out if we could have some synergy to that. And then the last thing, I think you did speak right. So if you have a bad outcome at one of these courses and, zero, if you will, I see that it does. And I'm going to look, I think President Riley's over there. So I'm going to look at her nodding when I say this, right? That would go on the high school transcript and would affect your initial ability to get hope.
Into college.
Right. But it would also go on the college transcript when you got to that first check, would it not? So it is, I mean, that dawned on me too. That goes both ways. You go to a dual enrollment class, you do well, you get to put an A down for going in, and you got one when you get to the college. If it doesn't work out, you get, with power, with the opportunity comes responsibility.
That's right. It's costly to the student. And that's where I would go back to the importance of that advisement piece and those career counselors and people like that, because to your point, dual enrollment is a great opportunity, and it's going to be a great opportunity for almost every student. Every course in dual enrollment is not going to be an opportunity for every student. And that's advisement. That is advisement. So a student might get accepted into dual enrollment and there's going to be a certain course progression that's great for that student. But if they're in the wrong course or course they're not really ready for, or that they don't have some natural strengths in, and they're 16 years old, that's where we can get into less good outcomes.
So the last question related to that, with the advisement, I know there's AP issues that if you take an AP test and you get a 3 on the test versus a 4 on the test versus I think a 5 on the test.
Yeah.
Well, a 4 will get you credit for that at this school, but it takes a 5 to get credit for that course at Georgia Tech, right? I think that's a
Correct.
perfect example.
Yes.
And we're not wanting to change the rigor at our USG institutions.
Right.
So how do they do that when they're taking courses at all these places? I guess, how is the counseling, the advisement, you're saying, advising these students to say, hey, you think you're headed here, things may change, but because you're headed here, you need to be taking these courses because, if you take these courses over here and you're headed over there, they're not going to count for you anyway, other than as electives.
Right. So I would say the best guidance we have on that would be something like the USG TCSG transfer course list. Those 28 courses that transfer pretty seamlessly. If I take it at one place, it transfers to another if I change schools after I graduate. It may not count like economics. Joseph Eccles uses this example a lot. Economics, if I take economics at the technical college, that's on the list, that's on the transfer list. And then if I go to Valdosta State, that course will go with me. If I'm an economics major, I'm probably going to have to take that class again because that's different than if I'm going over there as an English major and economics. It's just one of my required courses.
Last thing I promise you,
Yeah.
Chairman Fleming, you said, I think I take that course
Yeah.
again. I'm going to let you walk way out to the end of the diving board with me
Great.
here and say, wouldn't you like to see TCSG and the university system have a more predictability in that transfer list? Oh, come on,
Sure.
come on out there on the
Sure.
list.
I think
We have the right people in the room to hear that to the extent that we can,
Yes.
without diluting any institution's ability to confer degrees, wouldn't it be great if these 17, 18, 19-year-old students had some more predictability when they're doing that? I just float that out. And I think the professional maybe is sort of agreeing.
Yeah, I would say just coming at it strictly from a high school counseling perspective, I would say the same thing to the College Board. And I would say the same thing to any colleges and university, as students are trying to make decisions and as they're trying to wisely navigate through high school to get to whatever their desired outcome is afterward, whatever that might be. The courses you take are very important, and the courses that you scaffold to build towards whatever it is that you're wanting to do are very important. And knowing that if I take this course as part of dual enrollment, it will transfer as this course is very helpful. I will say dual enrollment courses are more predictable than some of the AP and IB and some of those others. That's going to be a more predictable outcome. And the more predictability we can give students, the more informed a decision they can make and their families can make. So yes, I mean, I would say one of the challenges in dual enrollment generally is the variability from college to college. And I'm not interested in changing that particularly, nor is it in my scope to be able to do that, but just our colleges operate often very differently from each other. And so in terms of what they're going to give credit for, in terms of how they view transfer credit, in terms of who they're going to accept and all of that kind of stuff. And it just, from coming at it from K-12, we want our students to be able to kind of manifest into whatever it is that they're wanting to do. And the more linear we can make that path, the better, I would say.
Mr. Chairman, may I have 30 more seconds?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So without getting specific, but there's a school system close to here that has a deal with uh, college in the state west of us
Mhm.
that they
Yeah.
call, you know, familiar with that?
I am. I don't have anything to do with it, but yes.
I understand that.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just, I mean, and I can be more specific if the chair wishes, but I'm not trying to pick on
Right.
anyone. Are those students guaranteed any of that coursework being taken in our university system?
Probably, I don't know the ins and outs of all of that
Okay.
agreement or the MOA or whatever they've got, but,
I'm just trying to think
yeah.
when you got, when
I
you
would
have
say-
dual,
because
one,
I
you
would
have
say-
dual enrollment
yeah,
here, why
yeah.
you would do that, but
yeah, and most of our state schools in our region, take our dual enrollment credit, like as dual enrollment credit. So, not just as elective credit or whatever. So, so I would say probably yes. I can't answer that for sure. 'cause I
okay,
don't know.
fair enough. They seem to be happy with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I go to Athens on Saturday.
All right, Whip Park.
So just a lot of questions come to mind, but I'll try and start broad and then kind of dive a little deeper. But going back to the question that I asked President Riley, how much of an impact do you think that HB 444 had in terms of the decline in credentialing from 2020 to 2021, where we're seeing essentially half of students, again, in terms of the credentialing component?
My inference there would be, yes, it has had an impact. I think that we will see a continued leveling off of associate's degrees, to be specific about credentialing, just because of the amount of hours required. And so even if I'm willing to self-pay, I would really, in most cases, be self-paying for another 30 hours. And then with the elimination of ninth grade enrollment, do I even have time to do that? So I think I think for that kind of credential, that level, an associate's degree of that kind, we're probably where we're going to be with that. It might decline a little further. That would just be predicting, so I don't really know. The reality is just the number of hours required for an associate's degree versus what we're funding, right? I will say, I think in terms of technical certificates and diplomas and things like that, and I would certainly defer to my technical college system colleagues on this, but I think they have are pretty fluid in what they're doing in terms of adjusting some of those programs so that students can reach those credentials within either the hour limit of funding, having Hope Grant would help with that, but also within the amount of years available to them. So if a student starts in 10th grade rather than 9th grade, where can they get? How far can they go? So I see the technical college system responding to some of the limitations that 444 put in place and making some of those credentials and certifications as available as they were before. And then we'll just kind of have to catch up. Right. So I think we might see actually some growth there. Again, that's speculative, but I think given their response and some of the actions they've taken, I think we'll see some growth in that.
Do you see a lot of 9th and 10th graders before wanting to do the dual enrollment program who are no longer able to?
We do get, I do receive a lot of phone calls. The 10th grade situation is a little hard to communicate sometimes. So 10th graders can take any dual enrollment career tech that they like. They can only take academic if they qualify for that. And the reality is most 10th graders don't have any SAT or ACT score. They haven't taken it yet. So very few 10th graders actually have a score, much less a qualifying score. So explaining that to parents why they can do this, but not that is a little bit of a communication glitch. It's just fairly nuanced conversation to have. I do occasionally get questions about 9th grade enrollment. Again, as we kind of live into this new era of dual enrollment, that gets less. I'll tell you, most of the questions came from parents who had an older student who went through, And now their younger student is in high school and they're like, what do you mean they can't have dual enrollment in ninth grade? What do you mean we can't take 175 hours of dual enrollment? What do you know, I mean, that kind of, those kinds of things. Those calls are getting fewer. Again, as this becomes more just the lay of the land for dual enrollment. So I don't have a huge hue and cry to bring ninth grade back.
Okay. I appreciate the clarity. And I did not vote for HB 444, but I certainly understand one of the big objectives of it was to ensure that the program would be sustainable in the long run. I would agree with some of the limitations, certainly when it comes to course. And I think very illuminating in terms of the conversation between AP courses versus college courses. As opposed to guidance from counselors, are there restrictions where, for example, if there's an excellent AP course taught on English that you can't receive dual enrollment credit at any college, because that could certainly help address some of the FTE concerns that Chairman Martin raised, and which are making it more effective, at least from a course limitation perspective?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, for example, if you're taking an AP high school course, that's provided and covered by your K through 12 educator.
Correct.
There's also greater safety in which if you fail, it's not necessarily going to harm or be on your college transcript.
Correct.
If you're taking a dual, English at a college via dual enrollment, that's certainly doubling the cost in terms of the FTE component, but also increases the risk of harming their students' long-term perspective. So as opposed to simply guidance from a counselor as to their options, are there restrictions either that USG or TCSG or could apply?
So I see what you're saying. So I'm going to let USG address that because they have actually put in some kind of qualifiers for what courses you can take with dual enrollment, and they'll speak to that more clearly than I do. I will also say local systems have some discretion there in terms of, like, if a student has failed every math class, but now they want to take college algebra, is that a good plan? No. So you do have, there is some local control kinds of putting some requirements in and things like that. And particularly around withdrawals and what the system might do with those. So that's really where that's going to happen. So that would be my response to that. But USG has looked at that. So they're looking at ways to again ensure, as much as we can, ensure student success in dual enrollment. Ultimately it's going to come down to the student and the onus is on the student, but trying to create as fortuitous a context as we can for those students.
So going into the dual enrollment graduation options, when did the accelerated career diploma, when was that created? When was that?
So that's actually the evolution of SB2, which passed with Move On When Ready back in 2015. It in 444 changed it to option B. And then last February, the state school board renamed that accelerated career diploma. But that we've actually had that in place since 2015 with very little variation. We did update some of the course specificity and the course requirements, but even the course requirements haven't really changed. So it's been here. We just are calling it something different now. So
does the 30-hour cap impact the accelerated career diploma differently as opposed to the traditional high school diploma route?
It could potentially, and that's part of what SB 86 mitigates. So if they're in a situation where the technical certificate, the pair of technical certificates that they're trying to earn, or if they're trying to get to a technical diploma and it is more than 30 hours, you don't want to get the student in a situation where they have to pay to finish, particularly if they're not going to be able to do that. So having access to Hope Grant funding, then they'll be able to finish out whatever it is they're doing. So when the funding cap was initially put in place, that did have some impact on what was then called option B, because if we're going to have to do 38 hours, they didn't have 38 hours, they had 30. So being able to access Hope Grant funds actually take some of that concern off the table for accelerated career.
Last question I have, and I think this goes toward, again, AP versus dual enrollment, but I think just broadly speaking, in terms of the needs and what's available in some high schools versus other high schools, that also certainly depends upon geography, tax base, things of that nature. Because at least from my perspective, the more flexibility we're able to provide, certainly to local districts, as opposed to just statewide caps, I would see as a better approach, or certainly ways in which we can have win-wins in terms of fiscal sustainability for the program, but also providing students throughout the state greater options. Do you see any potential viable solutions where, for example, if AP is just a substitute for dual enrollment, where in other instances, dual enrollment is incredibly valuable. Like, is there a way in which you could parse that out as to what options are available and where greater flexibility could potentially be provided to certain students in certain schools, if that makes sense?
I would need to think about that. I'm not sure. I will say, even with the funding cap and some of the limitations we put in place, I feel like our dual enrollment program there are a lot of ways that you all could have shrunk dual enrollment. There are a lot of ways you could. I witnessed it all over America. You could have identified a specific group and only that group can participate in dual enrollment. You could have limited it to 12th grade only. In Washington, D.C., seniors get one class a semester, so they get 2 classes. Okay, right. So you could have listed it at gifted only, right? So there are a lot of ways that you could have limited and shrunk dual enrollment, right? As painful as it was sometimes in implementing this, especially during the time we were implementing it, which y'all didn't have any control over, but I feel like the parameters that were put in place are good and maintain as much equity and access as the program was originally designed to create. The only real limitation that you put in place was age, right? And that's probably okay. I'm not sure 14-year-olds need to be doing dual enrollment. I'm really not. That's just my personal opinion. That's not a DOE position, but that's I probably need to be clear about that. But so I think that the modifications that were put in place gave us a way to maintain that same kind of access for any student who wants it around the state without significantly impacting how much credit they can get. Because really, you did have students who were getting all the way to associate's degrees and things like that. But, and I know part of the study committee will be to look at, does dual enrollment significantly shorten time from graduation to degree completion? Like that's, I think one of the things that joint study committee is looking at. But I feel like where we are right now in terms of one of the things I'm emphasizing out of my office is, let's look at those gaps in enrollment for your EL students, your ESS students, your students who might not think they can afford to go to college, but they could do dual enrollment, and then we can kind of sort it from there, right? So I would say it's pretty flexible right now. I think that's probably the only way I could answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to Chairman Dickey.
Thank you. And I really appreciate these questions and your candor and expertise in answering these questions. It's been very enlightening to me this afternoon, and I really appreciate it. And several of my questions have been answered along those lines of questions, especially from Chairman Martin. He's always on point on things. But in your presentation on page 8, which I really appreciate presenters giving possible solutions to problems when they come before us. And one of those first bullet points, provide high school career counseling. And I see that a lot in in my district a real lack of expertise in counseling our students going forward. And I think that's probably a problem maybe with our workforce issues too. And so I'm a big proponent of counselors. I know Chairman Dubnik on here looks at that too, and in appropriations. But your solution says providing really, I guess more counseling, more support in that area, and I agree. But who to pay for it? I mean, we're paying high schools now. We're paying the college post secretary. They're getting and on both sides. So, is there a solution on where that money would come from? Or are you suggesting dip into our state appropriations further for dual enrollment?
I 100% am not going to answer that question because I do not know the answer to that. So.
Well, that's probably a question to the chairman or to this committee. And as well as the second bullet point with transportation and schedule issues and those type of things. This program, as the chairman said, is very expensive, and so just wanted the committee to understand that. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
I do appreciate very much your answers and expertise on this dual enrollment.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. Next, we'll do Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the great state of Georgia for dual enrollment. I'm spoiled. I'm from Forsyth County. We have great high schools. We have excellent guidance counselors. We have an accessible University of North Georgia's campus in Cumming. We have a great technical school in Linear Tech right there, and it's all very accessible. We had, again, great guidance counselors who could help navigate our family through the process. I love dual enrollment. I think it's one of the greatest things we do because it first of all, it gives our children access to technical college, university experience while they're still safely at home with their parents, sort of getting exposed to that part of the world. It's kind of an introduction to life, which is university or technical school. So we had the best of all worlds. My daughter graduated in 2020, so it was pre-HB 444. What my hope is that other families would be able to avail themselves of these as well. And you mentioned counselors again, to Chairman Dickey's point. I'm curious, and Helen, how many people will you have there tomorrow?
Attending our training, I think we have about 25 coming for the day. So they'll come from all over. We're hosting it at Pioneer RESA. Anybody from anywhere in the state could attend, so they don't have to be part of that service area. Mostly they will be, but it'll be people from White County and Habersham and Raven and probably Hall. I know I've got some folks from Hall coming.
Does your intuition tell you it needs more bodies to be counselors, or it just needs resources in schools to be properly trained to be more effective counselors on dual enrollment?
So I think it depends. I think in some places we have, and in some of our better resourced districts, they might not need additional grownups. They might not need those counselors. It is more how we're allocating work, or how dual enrollment gets handled. Is there like a lead person? Is it spread out equally among everybody? And that's obviously going to be up to the school system and more than likely the high school itself, how that work is assigned. I was a high school principal for a while, and I know I decided what my counselors were doing, and what their work day looked like. So I think training for sure. And like any other area in education, and as I gather anything anywhere, we're at that, we've had a lot of retirement. We've had a lot we have a lot of new people. And so that's a great thing. They bring in new energy, new perspective. It's a great thing. The reason I'm doing a lot of in-person training is because I've got a lot of new dual enrollment coordinators who I feel like need a little eyeball to eyeball time. They need to, with dual enrollment, as with anything in education in our state, we have universal challenges and then we have specific regional challenges. So what is true in Cleveland, Georgia is not necessarily true in
Savannah,
Tifton. Right. So, and some of the challenges they're facing. So we're kind of, that's one of the reasons that we hit the road this fall, because we felt like Virtual is great and it provides a lot of access, but sometimes you just need to sit down and talk with me and show me exactly what you've got, and so that's why we're doing that. But I'm pretty excited at how many folks are coming actually, because it's for a lot of our schools, they're still really just kind of getting opened. So I'm looking forward to that. But I was down in Lenox, Georgia, down at Coastal Plains RESA last week, and ended up with about 40. I had some folks who just showed up, which was great. So and then we're going to also hit Warner Robins and Rome. So and then in the spring I'll do another set. But
Thank you, Ms. Henny. All right, committee members, we have two other agencies we need to get to. We have been with Ms. Feeney and DOE for an hour, but I do have three more members who have questions. If there are general questions that can wait, if y'all feel like you could waive, great. If not, if we could try to keep the question and answer very short. So with that being said, Chairman Jaspers. Okay. Chairman Martin's good. Representative Brunel.
Mine is really quick. I think that one thing, we keep talking about counselors, but you must also remember the parent. And the parent is the one that you need to talk to, because the interesting thing with dual enrollment, they're still in your house. And so you don't have to worry that once they go to college and they tell you, well, you can't really say anything, you can't, all of a sudden they become grown, even though you're paying for them to go to school.
Right.
So I really think the emphasis should also be on making sure that that parent understands the implications of, when I do dual enrollment, they need to pass this class and why, and the impact that it has on there. And I just want to make sure I make that statement. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ms. Feeney, and we really appreciate it, Matt, for y'all's participation. And I'm sure there'll be some other questions. Chairman Jaspers, was that you?
Yeah, I pushing the wrong button there, Mr. Chairman. Hey, I just want to jump in just real quick. When we
Yes, sir.
passed House Bill 444, I was the chairman of education, and I just want to reemphasize a couple of things. When we talked about withdrawals, we talked about that at great length, and and that is an issue for counselors, but the kids have got to realize that this is a college class, not a high school English class.
Georgia Senate Bill 144.
And that really became an issue. And so and I hope in doing this and this discussion about withdrawals that we're not dumbing down classes, because that was my biggest concern with this, was rigor, and making sure that rigor was uniform and that kids were learning and the classes weren't being dumbed down. And for Representative Burnow, I would like to see that dual enrollment equal AP. That if you take an AP class, it should be equal to, and you get credit for it somehow, but we need to further discuss that. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, we're going to move on. We have University System of Georgia, Dr. Scott Lingrell, to come speak to us. I know the Chancellor of Purdue wanted to be here today, but we definitely understand, and we are glad that you and your team are here with us. And one question that's been shot around, and I want to just throw this out there. This is USG, TCSG, and possibly President Riley. We can address this another day. In DOE's presentation, it says 2022-2023 school year, there was 45,000 students that participated in dual enrollment with the state. One of the questions was, obviously, that does not include the private high school students. Who tracks those numbers? I assume the institutions track, whether it's USG, TCSG, the private colleges, where these kids are coming from, whether they're public high schools or private high schools, and where is that funding coming from to pay for the private high school students, homeschool students? Is that student finance? Is that through Hope? So think about that as we go through this process, and we can obviously address this in another committee meeting that we're having next month, but just wanted to throw that out there for to see if we could possibly get some answers to that too. But Dr. Lingrell, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today, and I appreciate all of my colleagues that have talked before. I'm Scott Lingrell, Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs at the University System of Georgia. Been in the system for more than 18 years, and much of that time was actually at the University of West Georgia, 14 of those, and then 3.5 at Georgia Southern. I've been in this position for about a year. So I'm new to this role, and this is my first time in front of a committee meeting. So please be nice to me. I've been blessed to collaborate with the colleagues that you see behind me, both in the USG and across the other agencies. And we continue to work to do great things for Georgia students. So I'm glad to be here today, and thank you for having me. I'm going to do an overview just of the university system. I'm going to be quick on this because many of my colleagues have already said some of the things that I have for you. But all 26 USG institutions actually participate in dual enrollment. The students must apply to our institutions, and you've heard a little bit about the concept of different criteria for different institutions, which you actually might expect because of the different types of institutions that we have. The admission requirements for dual enrollment students are set by each institution at a minimum system requirements, but generally our institutions are slightly above those minimum system requirements. And then, of course, you've heard that dual enrollment courses help students meet graduation requirements in high school. And a point that I think may have been lost a little bit is that all of the courses that we have that are paid for and that go towards on a transcript at USG are approved courses that are listed in the dual enrollment course directory. And so that's kind of the place that all of this comes together, at that directory. It's not Wild West out there, everybody taking different courses. There really is thought that goes into developing that course directory so that they both meet the USG graduation requirements and high school requirements should they qualify there. You've heard a little bit about advising today. It is coordinated between the institution and high school. Many times that is a specific role at the USG institutions, that there is a singular person or many more, maybe more, doing that advising. And getting into the concept of whether that course applies towards graduation or not, those pieces that were asked earlier. You know, there are specific curriculum for each of our majors in USG, and the high school students are advised specifically. But generally, those courses are our general education that are being taken by dual enrollment students. They must complete the dual enrollment funding application if they're going to be funded through Georgia Student Finance. President Riley also talked a little bit about the number of credit hours. As you know, in HB 444, the 30-hour maximum, but students may pay for courses not listed in the course directory and or coursework beyond those 30 hours. But again, those are paid for by the student and not directly related to the funding that's here. And then, of course, there are lots of students that want to do as many courses as they can. There are limitations, as we've talked about, in terms of transportation and some of the pieces that have already been talked about. It might be helpful also to go back a little bit and talk a little bit about our structure. The USG is divided into 4 sectors. Research sector includes UGA, Tech, Augusta, and Georgia State. Comprehensives are institutions like Kennesaw and Georgia Southern. There are state universities, which include all 3 HBCUs and others like Middle Georgia, North Georgia, and then the state colleges are access institutions, and those are like Georgia Highlands, Dalton State, Coastal Georgia, and Gordon State. And I won't go through all 26 institutions, but you get the idea that there are 4 sectors. That's represented on the screen that you see up here in the different colors. Overall dual enrollment in this past fall of 22 was at 12,128. And that is a slight dip from the high of 14,258 in fall of 2021. Again, there are a lot of factors that go into that. Certainly, we're working on making a more stringent, more directed way of making sure students are taking the courses that are needed for graduation and no more than those courses. And then this is also during a time when there were test score requirements for the juniors and seniors, and many competitor institutions were not requiring test scores. So we do expect a little bit of a rebound in enrollment and dual enrollment this fall, and I'll talk a little bit more about those successes at the end of the presentation. On this slide, you can also see a little bit about the proportional distribution of dual enrollment students just across the 4 sectors, just by looking at the relative size of the different color blocks. We also yearly we publish a data digest called the Dual Enrollment Digest, published every year in January and updated in January. We'll have access to that certainly this past year's digest, and you can have we can provide that for you. But also we'll be updating that with fall of 22 data shortly. Is that my pizza? Is that? Oh, good. Great. On the screen is the average fall term credit hours attempted by dual enrollment students for the past 5 years. As we try to get students to take courses that are more relevant to their program of study, the overall number of credits have reduced slightly. I know you've also heard a little bit about maybe some of the effects of House Bill 444 and had some questions about those. So they've reduced slightly, but still the number of credit hours per student there is between 1 and 2 classes. Students are very successful in these classes. I know my colleague Jennifer talked a little bit about what happens if a student fails. Well, in the university system, the success rate is very high. As you can see by the different sectors there, between 97 and 95% of the students actually succeed in the credit hours that are completed by dual enrollment students. So that's very high, and it's remained consistent over time. That is even through COVID and the pandemic. So really good students are coming in, doing very well. The majority of credit hours taken by dual enrollment students are in person, face-to-face classes. However, since the pandemic, the number of online courses has risen and is approaching the course modality preferred by dual enrollment students. So we got better at delivering online courses. They got better at taking online courses. And so more and more are happening that way. I will say, if you see clear over on the right side of that slide where it says external site, that means it's delivered generally in the high school setting. So we don't deliver many courses in the high school setting, between 3 and 2%, 2 and 3% over the last 5 years. Once students transition to their freshman year, the average number of credits earned as a dual enrollment student has really remained very consistent. This slide shows that dual enrollment students earn on average about a full semester's worth of credit hours in the dual enrollment studies. So that is on average. Dual enrollment students are essentially taking a full term's worth of credits during the time that they've been in dual enrollment. Moving on to some success statistics. As might be expected, these excellent students are also retained at very high levels once they do matriculate to the university. The proportional increases are pretty consistent also across sectors. And you can see this slide really looks at dual enrollment students being compared to their non-dual enrollment peers. Pretty good graduation rates, or pretty good retention rates, I'm sorry, for those dual enrollment students. Again, they've got a little bit of experience under their belt before they ever come to college. So that's an excellent part of that preparation. Similarly, as expected, the graduation rates of those students that come in with dual enrollment credit reflect the excellent academic profile and preparedness of the students to succeed. As a reminder, the open access nature of our state colleges attracts students from all backgrounds and certainly reflects that more than other sectors, students stop in and out given their life situations, job, family obligations, those kind of things. So that may be one of the reasons why the success rates in those areas are a little lower. But still, dual enrollment students succeed at greater rates than their non-dual enrollment peers. The nature of dual enrollment is mainly that students do dual enrollment at a school near them, which may be changing slightly because of online coursework, but they have the academic credentials to go to almost any institution and may tend to want to go away to school once they decide to matriculate fully. Therefore, it's relatively low rate of enrollment at the same school where they enrolled for dual enrollment credit. And then finally, I have my contact information up there. I'm happy to take your calls, texts, tweets, whatever you'd like to send me, emails. But I want to tell you a little bit about preliminary enrollment for this fall. Again, we're not ready to announce this broadly, but the overall system is up about 25.3% in dual enrollment as of this moment, applications, and about 47% up in dual enrollment. The enrollment actually of those students for right now. And we've just started our term, obviously, so that'll settle in a little bit, but some institutional examples and some successes you may be interested in. Dalton State College is up 123% in new dual enrollment students. These are all new dual enrollment students coming in this fall. East Georgia is up 16%. Savannah State showing an increase of 46.5% in enrollment of new dual enrollment students. Middle Georgia is up about 60%. Georgia College and State University also is up about 60%. Georgia Gwinnett's up 39.2% in new dual enrollment. And again, that's contemporary information. Once we get to census date and things settle out, they may be slightly different than that, but dual enrollment students don't tend to change much once the term starts. They enroll and they continue to enroll as we go out. We don't have any preliminary data yet on the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech, if that was your interest. And this concludes my presentations. Love to answer any questions you might have about the university system and dual enrollment.
Thank you, sir. Well, there are a few questions. Chairman Martin, is that you? Okay, you hit a different mic. Okay, just there you go. Well, you can start on this one.
Just real briefly, you said coming in. I know we will, after we get past that, but how much of this new cohort is coming in or is going to be online?
I mean, do you have a projection for that? Yeah, one of my slides, I can go ahead and go back to that. I would believe that it would match pretty closely. I'm having a hard time seeing that. There you go. It matches pretty closely with the stats that are on here. 41% in this last year of dual enrollment courses generally, the full dual enrollment, those that are already in the system and those that would be new, would more than likely fit around that 40% mark. Again, that's pretty consistent with the data that Dr. Manga showed this morning in his presentation about overall enrollment and course taking methodology.
And do we have any empirical information relative to if you took dual enrollment at this USG institution, the follow through that you actually attended that institution?
That
you may have
is also.
I can't see that one. I'm not all the way turned around here.
So those are the students, the percent of dual enrollment students enrolled first time at the dual enrollment institution that they attended. And of course, this is general and these are averages.
Okay.
But it tells you that the nature of dual enrollment is that you're going pretty much locally. There are transportation issues, scheduling issues with high schools, with their high school coursework many times. So they're going locally for their dual enrollment. And these students are excellent students, so they may go away to school, whether that's to another USG institution or private institution or elsewhere.
Okay, the last question for later on for an answer is, are we delivering this in the most efficient manner for the students to use it to prepare themselves, to graduate from college, but also to graduate from high school, but also to graduate from college? Or are we delivering it in the way that we always have because we always have? I mean, Does that make sense? You understand the question I'm asking?
I do,
Like,
and-
are we not in 2023 post-pandemic with what we've learned about online delivery? Remember, this is for the student, respectfully to TCSG and USG. This is not to drive revenue or FTEs for you guys. I mean, this is for the students. So I would just ask both of you and the Department of Education, are we doing this in the most efficient manner? Not saying that we're not doing it in a good manner, but the most efficient manner to make it most advantageous for the student to move forward, because the further we can squeeze that dollar, the more hours that we could afford to pay.
Yeah, excellent point made. And certainly as we go through these meetings on this ad hoc committee, those are the types of things I think we'll tease out and be able to answer some of those pieces.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. What part?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a few questions. I think a lot of them are kind of focused toward the premise that I would love a better understanding of, that dual enrollment is our most expensive, or one of the more expensive programs that we deliver to our students. So in light of that, how much is a USG course cost generally?
Well, there are multiple costs at different institutions. Our lowest institution actually in this fall was actually less than one of all the TCSG institutions. And of course, there are higher cost as you go up the expectation for the sectors. So I don't have those right in front of me, but we can certainly get those to you.
A lot of variability, but I think what I
Very
was trying to
much.
get at is, in light of the cap for 30 hours, and I certainly appreciate and voted for SB 86 that allows access to the HOPE grant for CTAE courses. But I'm curious as to how many students, especially given that dual enrollment students are very overachieving, some of our best and brightest, how many of them, in light of this new cap, are actually paying out of pocket for some of these courses, or have we imposed a limitation on some of our best and brightest, at least within USG?
Yeah, I don't know that number for the whole USG. I can tell you as just came from an institution as an institutional representative, there weren't many that actually did decide to pay out of pocket for additional credits over the 30 hours.
And so fascinating to see greater utilization of online classes, which I think a lot of higher education is moving to that degree to a certain extent as well. Are online classes are they more cost effective than in-person classes? Certainly when it comes to FTEs, I would assume yes.
Yeah, I'll lean on my more academic colleagues to be able to answer that question, because the cost is not associated necessarily with the method of delivery, but it's also the professor that's teaching the class and the expectations of the class. I will say that sometimes the cost of the technology to be able to run the online courses is missed in that equation. And so it would be something that would be part of any kind of calculus that we would need to define what that is. But those are things that our finance people and academic people can get for this committee.
Last question, and again, great graphs. Do we have information as to, does it take dual enrollment students less time to graduate from college as opposed to no students without any sort of dual enrollment? Because I think that would also speak to how much more effective is this dual enrollment program per student, in order to best understand, first to ensure the long-term sustainability of the program, but also to better understand kind of the cost benefit analysis, where if the program is more expensive per student, again, I'd love to see some longitudinal studies in terms of where they end up. If they're staying more in Georgia, are we getting more return for our investment per these students as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I will tell you that there are so many confounding variables over the last few years with the changes in House Bill 444, but also the whole pandemic and everything that came through that, and the different learning modalities changes and things like that. It may be difficult to tease that out in that way. What we do know, though, is that, or the information that we can get is when a student does dual enrollment, how quickly do they graduate? What's their time to degree? And that even that has changed. As we put a 30 credit hour cap on it, students don't have as many coming in, and so therefore it takes longer time, especially as my colleague said, with the associate's degree in that. But I think that's information that would be worthwhile for this committee and certainly for us to have. I know that we can get that, just don't have it here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lingle. There don't appear to be any more questions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Next will be TCSG, Mr. Mark Peavy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on, and I will jokingly say I assumed you just saved the best for last, so we're glad to be here. I will actually wholeheartedly say that the dual enrollment program is one of the places and one of the things that we do across the system where we enjoy terrific partnerships on the K-12 side with the DOE folks, with our USG partners. This is certainly a terrific place where we get to see all three of those entities come together. So that being said, we are, in terms of our numbers, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague here in just a second, but we are just about back to pre-pandemic numbers. So where we were before the pandemic, we, just like all other institutions, had a significant drop off when that happened, but we have really seen, and my word here, the population for us has exploded back up to where we were before. We'll talk through some reasons for that and what we see for doing that, but we continue to see our technical education courses be really important to students all across the state of Georgia. And then we see in the access role that we play in rural communities in particular. We are the de facto opportunity for students in many places. You've heard a couple different times already the importance of geography and physical location in terms of dual enrollment opportunities available for students. Many of them are tied to that local high school. And if your local high school doesn't have or isn't a part of the state where it's quite a long distance to a different post-secondary partner, our 22 colleges and 85 campuses around the state really do lend themselves to being places where you can get that access role for initial dual enrollment opportunities, but also, we really do see first-time college goers taking advantage of those opportunities that they can happen and do them on their own high school campuses. So with that being said, I'll hand it over. Today we've got Derek DeBroyak, who is our Assistant Commissioner for Student Affairs and Secondary Education. So he's going to talk us through the presentation.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. So just want to give you all a brief, and I do stress brief, update on where TCSG is in terms of dual enrollment and trends. As Mark referenced earlier, you can kind of see our trend line from 2019 until this last academic year, which just ended here in late July, early August of 2023. We had about 34,000, almost 34,800 students involved in dual enrollment at all of our 22 technical colleges. A key point, it came up earlier in terms of students meeting their outcomes. You can see in terms of on the left-hand side, our graduates continue to increase. In 2023, we had 8,470 graduates, and those graduates earned 12,459 awards, certificates, diplomas, associate's degrees. So students are taking coursework and they're completing and really being able to take those credentials out into the workforce, which really drives home the mission of TCSG and the purpose that we serve. Some of our dual enrollment trends, 42% of our dual enrollment students take technical courses. In academic year 2023, we actually taught 321,000 dual enrollment credit hours across that. So about 42% of those dual enrollment students took that, and of that 321,000, 47% of those were in the technical areas. And so 58% of our students do take advantage, as Mark mentioned, of our open access mission to take core academic courses with a TCSG college. And whether that's at one of our 54 TCSG recognized college and career academies, the high school setting, or at our college campus or online. So there's a variety of ways students can access that coursework. Jennifer earlier from the Department of Education mentioned accelerated career. Just wanted to provide you all an update on that. In academic year 2023, 526 students took advantage of this high school diploma choice. Again, they have the choice of this accelerated career program or a traditional high school diploma. You can see some of the highlights of where our most popular programs were in that accelerated career diploma area, really concentrated in the technical aspect of it. Welding has typically been a trend the last few years. It's been our most popular program with not only these students, but our traditional enrollment dual enrollment students as well. And then just like I said, as part of a product of this really was designed, this program, to get students out into the workforce. So 44% of those students that finished that accelerated career diploma are currently actively employed in their field. And then 56% of those students that completed the accelerated career pathway still had that option to continue their education, whether that was with a TCSG institution, a USG institution, or a private institution here in the state. So those students are completing at a very successful rate and a very high rate, and then going on to whatever their next path is in that next step. And one other program that's very similar in the grain to accelerated career, this was adopted about 2 years ago, is the dual achievement program. And this is an alternative for students that have chosen to withdraw from their high school, students that typically would not have completed on a traditional 4-year high school track to a high school diploma. So these students actually have withdrawn from their high school, and they're attending one of our 5 TCSG Cogni accredited high school academies. These students, very similarly to the accelerated career, complete 9 core high school courses. And then also complete 2 technical certificates of credit. And then those students walk out with a regionally accredited high school diploma. So those 5 academies are at Chattahoochee Tech, Albany Tech, Athens Tech, Atlanta Tech, and Central Georgia Tech. So those are our 5 pilots. With that, we had 606 students that we served, 40 graduates at the end of academic year 2023, which is the first year we were able to award accredited high school diplomas. And of those, 50% of those are in the workforce actively employed, 50% continued their education, and we included that with the military. So 2 of our students, of those graduates, went directly into the military. So the military recognizes it as a recognized high school diploma. So those students that wouldn't have been successful in a traditional 4-year high school diploma track have taken advantage of this program. The trend for the fall, we're looking to surpass those numbers. We're over 525 students currently just for fall semester in this program. So it continues to grow, continues to gain traction, and has student interest in it as an alternative to a traditional high school diploma, and students that otherwise would have fallen off the radar and would have wound up in that percentage of Georgians that didn't have a high school credential. And as I said, I would be brief. Like I said, we are glad to take any questions that y'all may have, but I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Peavy to wrap us up.
I will say, just before you get to questions, Mr. Chairman, we did specifically bring up the Dual Achieve program because that is a task that you folks as a legislature gave us 3 years ago to get that program up and running. We're now, as Derek mentioned, in the first year of the pilot, where we're able to award the high school credentials, the high school diplomas for those students. Tremendous stories there, but I bring it up again specifically today because you will see as we move forward, we are anticipating some agency legislation that would allow us to take the pilot title off of that one and continue to move forward with it. We're seeing the success that we thought we would. And so there was a sunset provision from the pilot perspective in the initial legislation that authorized that. So we're at a point where we think we see enough success that the project deserves to move forward. And so we'll bring some legislation more than likely back for you to see it. Just want to put that on the radar screen for those reasons. So with that being said, any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you all. We appreciate the briefness of your presentation, and hopefully these questions we're fixing to get will be brief as well. But it's
Just
lighting.
note that down, Mr. Chairman, next time.
That's right. Well, I appreciate that. The board's lighting up here. Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I really agree with everything that you all are doing, especially, once high schools took out all those technical classes that they should not have taken out, we have a lot of kids that are just floating. And so I really admire you all for the hard work that you've done. I'm originally from Detroit. So when I graduated from high school, you could go and work in a factory and you could make a really good living. But there's we have problems now finding plumbers and all those different people that we all need at our house. And so I just encourage you to continue to work with our students and to, you know, have them identify those students that could get a certificate and go ahead and have a job, as opposed to them kind of wandering through high school and not really having a place. I do think you all are the place for them. Thank you.
What part?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as quick as I can. First, when it comes to the programs with highest student enrollment, for the most part, are those covered under the 30 hours, or do all of them have to be covered or supplemented by the SB 86?
A majority of those are covered under the 30 hours. The certificates that we have, a majority of them are under that 30, so students can get those awards. We do have some that can be a little more or a little longer, which is where the benefit of SB 86 does come in, with strategic advising for those students so that they take the right courses at the right time.
Thank you. So 526 high school students statewide are in the accelerated career diploma.
Yes, sir.
So everybody else, in terms of like a $200 million annual budget, goes toward kind of your traditional high school career. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So they would, I think, yeah. So of those five.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That opportunity is available for all high school students across the state of Georgia, but that 526 represents the number that have gone through and completed enrolled for AY 23.
Wow. Last question. In terms of the taking core academic classes at technical college, which goes toward that 30-hour credit, how much is there additional information in terms of overlap with AP courses? Again, just trying to parse out and minimize as much overlap as there is, to Chairman Martin's point, in terms of, 2 FTEs and tuition being covered for some of the dual enrollment students.
I don't know that we've got specific information in terms of an overlap, and if you want, we'd love to have that conversation. We figure out exactly what overlap means. I do think, I think that's a challenging one that all the folks who participate in dual enrollment across the state and all the various agencies can take a look at in terms of what makes the most sense and how to do that. That's obviously a choice that both students and parents get to make in terms of which one of those routes that they want to take. I think Ms. Feeney mentioned it earlier. You will see many students who do both for different reasons. But I know that we'd be happy to, if we can figure out what overlap means and how we want to look at that, we'll be happy to participate in that.
Thank you.
Chairman Martin.
This will be brief too, and you can probably guess it. So you tell me about the dual achievement. That essentially came from Chairman Tippin's program.
Correct.
Five pilot sites, and you want to bring it back and take the pilot name off of it. To do that really quick, can you remind us what the cost it was to implement in those 5 sites?
There was a $5 million appropriation that helped us create those 5 sites.
And ongoing it costs?
We're covering most of that now as those students, we use the same model that is the accelerated career diploma model. And so when those students get into taking those courses, they are part of our formula funding.
You see where I'm going here, $5 million and 40 graduates.
Right. And we're currently with the high school coursework. We're not actually funded for the high school coursework.
No, I know. I'm just saying when you bring it back, I mean, we all want to do good, but let's keep in mind with the cost that goes along with it as well. That's outside the course of our deal here today, but
happy to talk to you about some of the startup costs and where that gets started. We do believe that the original target in terms of the way the pilot was defined was 200 students per college at the end of that 5-year pilot. We're headed towards that. I think we'll get that and beyond. But your point is understood, and we have
just trying to get our hands around it. I mean,
yes,
great work. I mean, for those 40 people and those 600 people in the program, you're changing lives about it. I get that. It's just, I want us to keep a focus on doing it efficiently. There's only so much money to go around.
I will say the challenge on the front end of that piece was to get so each one of our colleges had to spend the time it took to get the accreditation on the high school side, the high school component of that. And so it was a year to 18 months to get that done. And so we are, in terms of the opportunity to turn out students, we're just getting to that. So you're absolutely right. But just want to make that clear, that pace, if you want to put it that way, in terms of those graduates there, should pick up as we move through the next couple of years to finish out that 5-year window. So, but we're happy to talk about that
more later.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's no further questions. Thank y'all very much for y'all's participation today.
Appreciate it.
And I'd like to thank all the members for participating today and being a part of the the conversation. And as we move forward, if there's any questions that y'all would like to be researched by the agencies or staff, please let us know, pass it on. Just as a reminder, our next meeting will be September 15th in Athens, and hopefully we'll be shooting out details in the next week or so with the location on campus. I think it's going to be the Continuing Education Center, and we'll send those details out. Also, I'd like to thank our staff today, Molly, for all of her hard work, and Brittany, and then also Christy from Legislative Council for being with us all day through Chairman. I just went blank. Weedower, geez, Chairman Weedower's committee earlier this morning that we sat through, and now this. But thank you all very much for being with us today, and we'll see you all in September. Have a good evening.
Christy in the corner. You got